So back in 1954, when Magna Engineering introduced the Shopsmith Mark V, on that main table, they introduced a very unique feature on the table insert. It has a table insert not unlike your typical table saw, but because it's used for more than just sawing, that insert has to have kind of some superpowers. Those superpowers were carried over in the 1980s and on the Mark V Model 510, 505, 520, and now the Mark VII. Hey, Scott from Can't talk today. Hey, Scott from MyGrowthRings.com. Here once again is in my sister's basement, where I am sporting a Rhodes microphone, which is not working because I'm missing a cable. So the audio is going to go straight to the phone. It's going to be a little bit sketchy. We'll make up for that very, very soon. Yes, let's take a look at these inserts and what makes them different. First off, you'll notice I have a variety of table inserts behind me. On the Model 510 and 520, which are the machines I use, you can get inserts for molding. This is a table saw function, but with a special cutter head. Dadoing, which is a table saw function with a special cutter head. You can see that it's got a much larger slot because molder heads are a smaller diameter than dado blades. And then we also have some inserts for things such as drum sanding and shaping. I set that there to remind me to talk about this, but actually these are the ones that I use because they have dust chutes incorporated into them. But you can see that one has a smaller offset hole, the other one with the larger hole. So this is the one that's used for shaping and routing. This is the one used for drum sanding. And they are designed in such a way to not only accommodate part of the drum or part of the shaper cutter below the table, but also to give us some degree of dust collection. In addition, there are some zero clearance inserts. Some of these were commercially made available by Shopsmith. Some of these were made from Masonite and work just fine. But these inserts don't have the magic feature we're here to talk about. So let's take a closer look. So let's take a look at this table insert. You can see it's held in place both front and back by a couple socket head cap screws or flat head cap screws. They have a 5/32 hex, so they work with the Shopsmith toolbox. And then you can see the insert sets down into a recess that is machined. Now, I started to clean this out and realize, you know what, maybe you should see this. I will typically use a golf tee because I always have one in my pocket. Some of you know why I always have one in my pocket. But I'll just use this to scrape out the sawdust that is gathering up and potentially caking inside of here. And this is true regardless of what table saw you have. You do want to keep this area nice and clean so that your table insert can be made to be flush. In fact, let's bring in the big guns. Try not to lose our screws. There we go. So what's so special about this insert? Well, first off, I've even heard people say that they thought their inserts were defective because when you lay them down on a flat surface, they're not flat. If you lay them against a straight edge, I can't find a straight edge. If we lay them against a straight edge, you can see that there is a little bit of a gap. No, they're not defective. And in fact, it goes beyond that. If you look on the bottom, this insert has some little bumps that are cast into it. And these bumps in the center have not been machined, but as we go further out from the center, they have been machined lower and lower and lower. And from here, again, a tall one, and then they've been machined lower and lower and lower. So the idea behind this is when you put this insert in, it should rock back and forth in the slot. So what's that good for? Well, you'd think that typically you would just go ahead and tighten all these things home. If we do that, we will end up with an insert that's sitting below the table. So that leads a lot of people to say, well, I guess I have to shim that. And I've seen people putting layers of masking tape underneath this. No, you don't want to do that. In fact, right now, yes, it's sitting low here and low here. The point of this, having a slight curve to it, is we can tighten them up, and then loosen them one at a time and adjust them to where that insert is now flush with the table surface. And it is now under spring tension. When we're using a table saw, it only matters that we don't run into the face of the insert here and that we don't catch the back edge here. So if anything, I could have this a little low and this a little high if I wanted to. The original version of the Mark V, this one with this insert that's sitting within the table, it's important that we're able to get this flush on both sides because we never really know which way the stock is going to pass across that insert. Yeah, I agree, that's clever. Let's take a look at the 510. So that takes us to the 1980s when Shopsmith introduced the Model 510, increasing the table size dramatically, giving us some T-slots for the miter gauges, and some thought went into making that insert go completely off the back of the table. That way, we're not ever running a risk of running into anything here on the back. Also, by increasing this size quite a bit, it allows us to put our sanding disc through here, our 12-inch disc, and it gave us the ability to put a splitter or a riving knife down in the slot along with the blade. Some people have noticed that there are these little tabs built into this slot, and that is because if you would accidentally not tighten the arbor on your Mark V and the blade would begin to drift off of the arbor, or the arbor drifting off of the spindle, that's going to run into the side of the blade where there are no teeth, and that's going to prevent that from damaging either the insert or your saw blade. And someone drilled through my table insert. Let's take a look at this. This insert should have a slight bow to it, which it does. That's actually a little bit less than maybe I'm used to seeing. But you'll notice down here, the surface below has been machined in order to accommodate the insert and these little bumps that are now cast into the insert at different heights. So there's no need to machine these to different heights now. They are slightly different in height. So when we put this insert in place, what I typically do is I will tighten the back set screw in place. And that should make this insert, and it does, stick a little bit above the table surface here on the front. And so when I run my my set screw in, all I need to do is tighten that down to the point where it's flush. I don't need to snug that down because the spring tension of this insert is going to hold that in place. Now, I mentioned I'm used to seeing them with a little bit more bow to them. This one I notice has got about the bow I'm used to seeing. So what if you don't have the same amount of bow that you once did? Well, it's possible to return that bow to the insert fairly easily. What we'll do is we'll take this out and lay it face down on top of something. I'll just use my toolbox here, because is there anything that can't do? Yes, there are a few things. I'll put that dead center, and then holding it down on this end, I'll push down, and I just want to add a little bit of bow to it. And yeah, it's got a little bit. Let's try that again. We'll tighten the back firmly in place. And again, it is standing a little bit above the surface. And we'll lock that in. Oh yeah, so I can drive that below the surface, and that would be a real problem if I was shaping or doing any operation where I'm heading that direction. So I want to be sure to back that off to the point where it's flush. So what we're going to do is to add an insert for drum sanding or shaping, and we happen to have the dust chute on it. It's important to tilt our table before we install this chute, because otherwise it's not going to clear the tie bar on the table. So taking that insert out, we'll pivot our table over. And then there's one more thing we have to do, and that is we need to remove a guard that's attached to the tie bar. Oh, hit my tripod. Here we go. So if you've got it installed, there is a guard or a chute don't even know what we call that. We're going to go ahead and call it a guard that is attached to the tie bar, and that needs to come off, otherwise we're not going to be able to pass our dust chute through. And because I will always lose those screws if I set them down somewhere, I'll just reinsert them here so I know where they are when I want to return back to sawing. That little chute does a lot of important channeling of dust when you're sawing, dadoing, and molding. And then from here we can just pass our insert right through and lock her in place. Again, this is for use in the drill press mode. You can do this with the machine standing vertical or laying on its side. So all that's left to talk about are these zero clearance inserts and these homemade inserts. Yeah, you can make these out of 1/4-inch masonite. It's really pretty straightforward. You just trace your existing insert onto the masonite, cut it out with a jigsaw, bandsaw, whatever you got. You can also use your original insert with a flush trim router bit on a router table, and you can trim a whole stack of these to the right shape all at one time. Then you're going to drill and countersink them. Now the problem with this is they don't have that crown, so you are going to have to shim. And there's actually a tip for that as well. My advice to you would be to use masking tape, but to apply the masking tape to the insert, not to the table. Put this wherever I feel like I need a little extra thickness, and then if I remove this, this insert will fit in the same location every time. I've seen people put it in the slot of the table, and then from insert to insert, they're constantly having to fuss with shims. Now, once you get the shimming right on this with tape, it'll fit that way every single time you use it. I look forward to your questions, comments, and cheap shots. Make it a great day.